Hey, Daryl, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Dave Show.
I'm excited to see Daryl. It's
No,
been so long. I haven't seen Daryl
you and Daryl worked
in
together.
years. We worked together. We worked together for a while, and it was always great. Daryl's a strategist, and it's always some of my favorite people to talk to, a strategist, because it's like where the real insights come, where the real ideas kind of form. And like, you don't have a good strategy, you don't have a good insight, you don't have a good like base thought or something that you can really grab onto, then you kind of have nothing, and things just become fake, and things just kind of feel like forced. So I don't know, me and Daryl spent a lot of time just shooting the shit, just getting together, and that's kind of always stop by his desk, and we would just talk, but it was just always enjoyable. Talk ideas, talk side ideas, talk ideas for whatever we're doing, and we always come up with something interesting that we want to like continue on. Yeah. Anyway, I love talking to Daryl. Talk with Daryl for hours.
Yeah, same, man. And thanks for having me on the show.
So it's always, and again, like everybody doesn't know, I think it's always a surprise. I never know who's going to be on the show and when it's actually going to be. It's always happens on different days. So Jackie just said just now, I was having some coffee, and she's like, "Come in the other room. We're doing the show. We're doing a podcast." And I'm like, "Now?" And it's always kind of like that, and it's always a surprise. So it's a good surprise. So thank you for
yeah, it's an interesting format. I mean, like I told you, I haven't been on a podcast before, so this is my first one. I've been asked twice, and I chickened out. So sorry to those people.
I probably wouldn't do it. That's the thing. If it wasn't for her and it wasn't for this format, I probably wouldn't do it, because I don't like thinking of things ahead of time, and I don't like knowing what the format is, knowing what the topic is, because I get in my own head and then I think about it too much, and it just like fucks me all up. So unless it's just a real conversation that's raw, and it's just like, kind of unfiltered and no pressure, like that's the kind of talks I like to have. I don't like to like plan shit too much.
Yeah, I'm the same one.
Yeah.
The strategy, like to plan shit.
you gotta be planned, but then you just gotta go with it. Like, I don't like to be scripted. You gotta do your homework and have like a foundation, but then I'm more like on the fly. Because I heard you say, like, the other day you were saying like, oh yeah, somebody asked me a question, and it's like kind of like that moment from Old School where he like blacks out during the quiz, and then he answers it perfectly, and then you're like, what just happened? Like,
yeah,
that's kind of how I feel sometimes, when you're trying to present something. Like, I mean, I always had anxiety around that stuff, and I would think I did really bad, and then I would say, oh man, did I mess up? And somebody would be like, no, you were fine. But yeah, it's like the same way. You just kind of got to get ready, and like when you do like these pitch rehearsals and you got to like rehearse all the lines, I'm not good at that. It's like, I'd rather just like know the stuff and then just kind of
I think that's
wing it, but like,
yeah, well, that, like you just said, you're not winging it, and that's actually the perfect thing. That's a good thing to talk about. It's like you have to just know your shit. You have to be involved in like whatever you're actually working on, whatever you're doing, you got to be dedicated to it, and you got to understand it, and you got to like dig deep on it ahead of time. It's all, that's the prep. And once you do all that and you really understand the material and understand what you're talking about, everything just kind of flows and comes naturally, like you said. Then it doesn't become like a formatted script and something that you have to kind of, oh shit, I got to say this line, or I got to, read through this whole thing, just because you know and understand the material. So it's just natural to you. That's true fucking deep learning of whatever it is that you're kind of taking in. And then, like you just said, it doesn't feel fake, because it's not.
So what made you not chicken out on this one?
Part of it was just like, I kept telling myself, I can't keep saying no to these things. Like, I just gotta face my fears. But it was also just, I mean, I wasn't planning on it, and then you just kind of hit me up, and I really like Dave, so I was like, I gotta catch up with him. So I was just like, you know what, this is the sign. I gotta say yes to this and to other things. So,
and that's kind of what this was born out of. Was Dave and I have great conversations all the time about creative stuff. Then Dave also gets on the phone with people and catches up, and he has great conversations about creative stuff, but they're just one-on-one. And these are conversations that everybody is having and everybody's thinking about or talking about. And I was like, why don't we just have this conversation for the public? So it's like a recorded phone call in a way, or a recorded conversation in our living room sometimes. Yeah. But, okay. So I'll jump in to the question. So you guys get asked to do things on the local small business end a lot, and which my favorite is when people ask you to do logos, Dave. So people are always hitting Dave up, and they're like, hey man, just started a business. Can you make me a logo? And as we know, like Dave's a creative director, so he's done logos before, but that's going way, way back. So when you guys are actually offering your skills at that smaller end to small business and local businesses, how do you incorporate those skills? Because on the corporate level, because they already have like a base following.
Well, it's interesting too, because like you just said that, even when we work for jobs and work for bigger companies and all that stuff, they know what we do, and we kind of go in there, we have a role, and you kind of know our role in a way, and where we kind of sit in the hierarchy of the whole process. And it's like, we're specialists, so we specialize in these things, and we kind of go in there and like we do that. And so it's funny when a small business or something like that will ask, or somebody starting a new business will ask, hey, I got the new business, will you do my logo? And my first thought's always like, oh, for fuck's sake. So I was like, I don't really do logos. First of all, I can do logos, and I went to school for design and all that stuff, but I don't necessarily, I have to be in the real mindset to want to do a logo, first of all, and I don't really enjoy doing logos because it's not really, in my head, yes, there's strategy behind it, and yes, there's a lot of things that actually are meaningful, and a good logo really can go a long way. To me, the logo's not really the important part. It's not the storytelling. It's not the strategy. It's not like what's going to change the business. You can have the shittiest logo in the world and the shittiest name in the world, and it doesn't really matter, and the business can be fucking great and thriving because you have a story and you have a real thing to actually present and show and showcase, with the world. So whenever somebody starts off with like the logo as their first jump into the business, to me, it's like a little premature. It's like the logo doesn't fucking matter. Think about what you're offering and what's your business, and let's talk about that. What are you really trying to say, and what are you really like either trying to sell, or what's your story? What are you about? And, it's always like a new company starting with the logos, and I'm just like, oh, fuck. So I like to start, again, with strategy, and I like to start with, like, actually understanding what do you want to do? What's your actual goals? From there, then we can talk about building the pieces or the blocks or whatever you might need. What was the question?
No, yeah. I mean, for me, it's like a more recent thing. Like, it's not, I've worked in the business for 20 years, and like the whole time it's been working for corporations, huge enterprises. And like, you said, they already, a lot of these things are already established. And most of the time I hadn't been at a place that had done brand development and things like that. I've been at data-driven, like integrated marketing shops or places that were like the digital AOR kind of stuff. So there'd be like elements of that, but usually there was like another agency that did like all the brand work and made sure that story was already set. And then we were kind of like working with it. So I think, I consider myself, like you were saying, specialist or general, like I consider myself more of a generalist. So there's like a lot of hats you got to wear, a lot of things you got to know, but like there's still areas that I wasn't so experienced in, like brand development. So now that people are asking me, I like, that have their own companies and stuff, it's like, I'm realizing like that's a gap, right? So that's a place that I'm trying to lean into through some of that stuff to just learn it more, because there really is like a big difference between, it's like fundamentally it's marketing and there's all the same stuff, and it's storytelling and it's the visual identity and all these things that big companies and small companies need. But it's like a lot of the stuff that we're used to doing, like getting together the content strategy for social and all that stuff. It's like, you got to take a step back with some of these companies and think like, well, what really is the story? And like, that's not the art of shaping a brand and stuff, is just like not my secret sauce. If there's one area that I think I'm weak in, and people have been asking me for years, oh, can you help with this, help with that? I've been busy. And it was another thing where I was chickening out, where I was like not giving myself enough credit, and like, oh yeah, I know this other person, I would pass them on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to like mess anything up or whatever. So now I'm starting to lean into it a little bit more. I've been helping my dad kind of on the side with just like a little thing. And, my wife she starts to lean into her stuff more. Like, yeah, it's something we want to get like a wall up here so we could just start going through that.
Yep.
Brand process and really thinking through stuff. So,
well, it's interesting because what you just said too, it's like, a lot of times we're working on these bigger brands and, there's already, there's so much established, right, already with it, that we kind of come in and we're kind of taking like the next level of the deeper look into whatever that campaign level kind of idea or an identity or whatever that it is. We're launching this program or whatever it is the assignment is. And a lot of times we're like, fuck, I just wish we could go back a little bit and kind of start a little bit from the beginning, right? Or to really help them develop, because I don't want to start at this place because I didn't really agree with where they were before, maybe, or whatever it is. So this is kind of interesting now that we're talking about this, because it's like so many times when we're working on these big brands, we wish we kind of started a little bit more at the beginning to really develop that story and that strategy from the core, right? Because sometimes when you're already established, you've been going so long and you're a big brand, it's hard to get back there, and it's hard to get them to really think fresh and think about, your story over again. It's something new when you already been doing something for so long. But then it's interesting when we do have, a new client or somebody freshly starting out, they need all of that. And then we're kind of like, fuck, well, shit, like, we're starting again now from the beginning. And it's just an interesting kind of dynamic, because one way we're always wishing to go back and start from the beginning. And then the other time we're getting started from the beginning and we're like, fuck, yeah.
I wish you had something.
Yeah, I wish you had something. We really have to kind of draw and really kind of understand. But again, like both sides of that coin is really interesting to kind of work on, because again, it's a new challenge with each side, but they're both completely different. And I think I like the balance of being able to do both.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of it's hard to find somebody who's like literally just starting because they
Yeah.
typically don't have money to pay somebody to help them with the marketing and all that. So it's like they always have some sort of business that's already at a certain place. You got to kind of like parallel path. It's like, how do you help them with this stuff that's already working, and then at the same time take a step back and work on those other things, and then try to like at some point make those two things connect. And that happens even with like the big clients, right? Like I'm
Yep.
going through stuff now where it's like it's not rebranding or anything like that, but it's like overhauling like a CRM program for someone. It's like they have one that's running right now, and like you can't break the whole thing and like just shut it off for 6 months while you do it. You got to like build this whole thing in parallel while you're still
Yeah.
reporting on this other one, and then flip the switch and like relaunch it. So it's yeah, like I guess that skill of like being able to juggle those things or like kind of work on kind of two things at the same time is just no matter where company is or where you are, like what type of agency you're at, like that kind of thing always comes up, you know.
Yeah.
It's
And I think
never-
we worked the last place that we worked together. It's interesting because what I learned a lot from there is like the story is always continuous, right? And so there's really no beginning, there's no end, there's no end. It's just kind of always evolving and always going. And what I enjoyed our time there a little bit too was just make and just continue to tell the story and just continue to put things out. And so whether you're at the beginning or you're at, you're in the middle or you're pretty far established, the story is going to continue. And if you don't continue the story and you don't continue talking to, whoever it is, your audience, and just continue to just put yourself out there, you're just going to fizzle away eventually. So I just like the idea of not being so precious at the beginning, the middle, wherever you are in your journey. It's just continuously putting shit out there and just continuously telling new stories and kind of, coming up with new things that you can kind of develop and build on, and you evolve based on what you kind of continuously put out, which I think is interesting. Because I think a lot of times, especially even the podcast, right? Like I want to do a podcast or whatever forever. And I didn't, because it's like, what's the idea and what's the thing and what are we going to do? And like you hold on to these things so tight before you even get started, right? And so luckily Jackie just like, let's just fucking start this. We'll just start calling people. We'll just start having conversations, the type of conversations I like to have anyway. Like this is the real shit where one word's going to be said in this thing or the next thing or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like maybe we're onto a new business idea or a new thing, or like we just inspired each other for something completely different. And like, unless you continuously keep doing these things and just go and just keep moving, like you kind of get stuck and you don't evolve. And so I kind of like, again, we're talking about both sides of that coin, right? Where it's like, established businesses that are new and kind of, where they are in the process. And I think that the idea for me that I've learned is just go and just put yourself out there and just keep, iterate and keep working on it. And that's where you'll really find what you really have to offer. And you're going to find what you like and what you don't like. And something you thought you might have liked or the way you wanted to do it, you may be like, fuck, I didn't want to do that like that. Like if this was a structured podcast and we had to go to a place and we had to fucking have our microphone set up and, in front of our face, all that shit, right? Like maybe it'd be so much, maybe I wouldn't like that. Maybe I would love it, but maybe I wouldn't like it, right? Because it just wouldn't feel real. And so to me, it's just like, you just got to start somewhere and you just got to start talking time.
No, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what you said. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, you just got to start. I like to have a good foundation of things and like do my research, understand the category, understand like the, customer that you're going after, all that stuff. Going back to the other thing, there's like stuff that needs to happen. And it's like, you got to do that homework in parallel while you're building that knowledge. You have to be doing stuff, and taking what you do know and applying it. And it's not just with like the creative work, right? It happens with like our stuff. It's like you got to just be willing to take a stab at something and then put it out there and get it in front of a client or something and review it and iterate on it that way, and just not wait until you have like the perfect thing or here's the perfect the perfect strategy or the perfect idea. It's like, no, this is rooted in some good insight and it's a good hypothesis, and that's what it's all about, right? Like the Vayner way of doing things. And I mean, that's not the Vayner way. It's just the scientific way. And Vayner found like a way to make it work, like in the platforms, that they're in. But yeah, you just got to like do stuff. And, brands they constantly got to evolve just because there's so much going on in culture and people get bored with stuff and that. And also they're trying to look for new audiences. So it's like, if you're going after a new target, like what's a good way to get in front of them? That's different from the way that you got in front of these other people, but that still rings true to the brand, like a lot of people geek out lately over Liquid Death, and look what they just did like the other day. Yeah.
And again, it's a marketing company essentially. more so than it is a product, because they're just really storytelling, and they've kind of built the strategy and the story, and and again, it's really just water, just like any other water in a way.
But that's the thing. And when it came out, I mean, I think I was at the point where I was just like, I was fed up with the water business, between all the bullshit where you see like, oh, all the, they show pollution on, and, all this stuff that they're hauling out of the ocean. And it's like taking water and not compensating people and selling it for money. So I was just like, and when that first came out and everybody was like geeking out over this brand, like it's like, I almost didn't even give it a chance, because I was like, oh, it's another opportunistic person coming in with a gold can trying to like get that water money. But then when I understood what they were about, and I tasted it too, like mango drink is awesome. Like all their flavors are really good.
Yeah, I haven't actually tried the flavors, but I do like and I'm a weird person when it comes to like these bubbly drinks and all these things, because I like a tight fizz. Interested in weird. I've only tried like the regular one, but now
dude, you gotta have the other ones.
I gotta try it.
When they're on sale, I definitely scoop it up.
Oh, for sure. And like every once in a while, like, I see them, and then I'm always like, I would like a can, because I do like them. I do like the brand. I like all the people that work on it and that are behind it, and even but and it's just one of those things that I'm just always looking at. I'm like, I just know how they're doing it, and I'm just jealous of it, and because that, like, I just know it's a fun process, and they're just like really telling deep storytelling, and they're just like making great work. And I know that the conversations in the room are just not these pretentious whatever conversations, right? And like, because I know it's a lot of smart people in a room just like doing just really good work, and they're moving very fast, and they're making a lot of stuff. I mean, even the last thing they dropped, I think yesterday or something like that, was like, with a makeup brand, or like LG or something like that. And like they did, the Kiss makeup, this integration, this whole class, like that's, again, it's like, it's so right for what they do, and they're so on point with what they launch for each campaign, that makes so much sense for what they do. And then when you even look deep into what their strategy really was and where it started, was like the whole death to plastic. And death to plastic wise is why they only fucking sell their shit in aluminum, in cans, which again, is just another deeper layer to their whole strategy. And then like the tagline, murder your thirst. Like there's just every single thing, from like the tagline to the death to plastic, and why they use aluminum cans, and all this kind of stuff, and how they're contributing to, give back, and, kind of fight a bigger thing. But they focus on it in a very interesting, strategic way. When they tell their stories, they don't really say like, we're like environmentally friendly, and we're trying to do this, like, and tell the typical story the way that a lot of other people would tell, and it would just go over your head. Like, so everything is so tight as far as like how they're actually promoting all these nuances and levels to their strategy. And again, it's strategy and execution, right? Because they could have this strategy, and if it was executed poorly, it would be shit, and this brand would not be the billion-dollar valuation brand that it is today. But, again, if they had just great creative and then no strategy, then it would just be a bunch of interesting, edgy kind of alternative type pictures and all these kinds of things that, like, again, it's both strategy and creative execution that comes together. And I think a lot of times it's not easy for a brand to have all of those sides. It's not you. I mean, we've done it. We've worked in so many different brands. It's not easy to like have great strategy, great creative, but then not just great strategy and great creative, but the execution.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get like the marketers that are even on LinkedIn or whatever, like won over it. I think it's because, like you said, they're jealous. It's like they want to work. I think those guys over there, it's like they know who they are and who they want to be, and they're doing that, right? And they don't have like, at least it doesn't appear, and I'm sure they have lawyers and all that stuff there, but it's like, it seems like almost like nothing gets lost in that process where you're trying to be like, can we do this? Can we put this out in the world? And like, it's like, no, they think of it, and it's like, it's who they are, and it's like they go with it. So I think a lot of marketers just wish that, they kind of knew themselves that well, right? I mean, it kind of,
I think it also goes back to what we are just talking about, like the beginning of like when you're a brand starting out, or you're an established brand. Sometimes when you're so established, it's really hard to get back to the core and what you really believe in. And a lot of times a new brand, right, they kind of come with a lot of inexperience, or, a lot of founders doesn't necessarily come from the same world that we've all lived in, to really start a brand from the core with a deep strategy and a deep story, and on how to execute, and actually know how to execute it, right? Like, sometimes we're working with brands like, oh, a chef, and they start in a restaurant or whatever, like, but they're a chef starting the restaurant, and they're whatever. They're not advertising people or creatives that have been in this business working for some of the best brands in the world that now get to start from the beginning, right? And this group of people was that. Some of the best people in creative in their day at some of these agencies now took everything that they've learned and started a product from the very beginning. So they were able to build that company exactly how they knew it should be, and work the way, to their advantage, which a lot of times you don't really get that opportunity. We're working on established companies, or working on companies that were founded by somebody else, or whatever the story may be. They started from level one, that idea. And I think that's really interesting, because even a lot of other companies do that, and a lot of smaller companies will do that, and they become like, their own in-house marketing agencies. And then this whole thing with like, should you be an in-house and you do your own marketing or whatever, or should you, go work with an agency? And I think there's no real right answer. I think if you understand how to develop a product and you really know the process and what it takes, you can be your own in-house agency and do it better than an agency could ever help you, do, right? And like, maybe they'll get to the point someday in the future where they lose their identity, where people start to go different places or whatever, and they will need to then employ an agency to really help them get back to the core and find what their strategies and what they believe in and why they existed in the first place. But as of right now, they're still so new and they have all their core. That's like, where innovative businesses start, as long as you keep that kind of core and kind of and always put what you believe out. And you're staying so true to what you believe and what that core is, that they obviously haven't lost it yet.
Well, like you said, they started with like this mission to kill plastic, right? And I don't know if they had all this all like planned out like when they first launched, but they started with water, right? And then they got into the flavored waters, and then they started going after the iced teas, right? So yeah, all that stuff about, the planet and it's about health. It's all kind of wrapped together, and kind of, so they can attack each one of those industries, and it's all beverages, but it's like they can just erode share, and that's what they're doing with, like, I feel like what they're doing with this elf thing is like, it's new audiences, right? Like I don't know enough about elf cosmetics, but I think it's like, it's natural, it's like vegan kind of, like, so there's a shared mindset. So yeah, I think it's a good brand to
I think exactly what you said
right now, and just like pay attention to, for sure.
Yeah. They both share a mindset and a shared belief. And I'm sure like they wouldn't have picked this one company to work with if they didn't share similar kind of, beliefs or goals or whatever in mind. Like they could have probably found somebody else, right? So both these just seem to probably align for whatever deep reasons that we don't know on the surface that made that partnership like a fruitful partnership.
I'm sure there's been tons of other water brands that have launched in the last 5 years. Can you name any of them?
Like, and a ton that have launched after them, just because they see the success of Liquid Death and they're like, look, I want to start a water company too. Start something else from the core, whatever it might be. But yeah, like you just said, a lot of companies have started probably before that we've never heard of, that never made it. And a lot of companies are now starting after it because they see so much success and they're like, fuck, they're valued at billions of dollars now. They've only been around for 4 or 5 years. Like, shit, like, I want to try that. There's clearly a market, but it's not easy to tap that.
The beverage market was like owned by the same players for so long, like at large, right? If you add up everything, sodas and alcohols, like, and now you're seeing, I think, with like non-alcoholic movement, and like there's all these things that are out now. It started with like kin, like that drink, that kin euphorics or whatever, adaptogens and things like that. It'll lift your mood. And I think you're just seeing like a lot of stuff going on in that space,
all these strategies and all these different things. And there's just so much layers, and it's been going on for so long. And I think the biggest thing is, like we talked about earlier, is just trying shit and exploring and testing shit and just getting yourself out there. And if you don't put yourself out there and you hold it too close to your chest for too long, again, what a strategy that might have been good 10 minutes ago may no longer be good, right now or 20 minutes from now. And I say it like 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes, and like shit does move really that fast, and things may not be, relevant. So I think you just have to, again, put things out there. And I've had ideas, again, like 3 months ago or 2 years ago, and they're still in my notebook, and I'm like, I'm going to get to them. But now I look back at them, I'm like, those fucking ideas suck now. They're not even worth putting out now, because like the time has passed, right? So I think it's like, again, just putting yourself out there, just doing it, iterating on these things. And I think when you're talking about these small businesses, I think that's why I like that we transitioned to the water conversation and even the Liquid Death in a way, right? Because I think it's not about the logo. It's not about it's all the pieces that kind of come together, and it's the entire story. And even like Daryl was saying, it's like, who knows what pieces of that story and strategy they had at the very beginning, or if it just kind of like they kind of stumbled upon it, or if they did start with the death to plastic, or if they did just start with, we just want to do a water company, and what could that be? Like, who knows really how they actually started. But the idea is they just started, and they didn't focus on, getting caught up on just one element of that thing. They focused on their story and their strategy and what they want to actually put out there into the world, and then kind of figure out what comes. Do we need a fucking really badass logo to fucking complement whatever we're doing? And like all those pieces kind of came together, but it was a collective of all these pieces that make the thing what it is. So my words of wisdom would just be fail faster. Like everybody says, it's so cliche. Put your shit out there, fail faster, get your nose. Like we all, like everybody keeps fucking saying, and just start doing it. Like even this podcast, right? Like we're doing it, and like we haven't fucking had crazy views on millions of views and all this kind of stuff, but they're great conversations. And for me, selfishly, like I love them because like these are conversations I love to have with good people that are really fucking talented. And whether people are listening yet, have caught on yet or not, it doesn't necessarily matter because the conversations are good. So selfishly, they help me.
2-minute warning, guys.
But sorry,
2 minutes.
2-minute warning.
I
Yeah.
I can keep going.
I know you can keep going, but I want to be respectful of Daryl's too.
Yeah, I guess words of wisdom. I mean, I guess you gotta start doing stuff. But again, it goes back to like you gotta have that foundation, that story, and like understand who you are. Otherwise, it's just like haphazard. It's spray and pray. You're gonna burn yourself out just like doing stuff.
Yes.
So it's gotta be calculated to an extent. And I think it's about knowing that story. It's about like getting some of the fundamental stuff right. And I mean, I'm talking like if you're in a business that you're selling stuff, right? Like you might want to just jump to start doing Facebook ads, but like if the funnel that you have is like not efficient, is there more that you can be doing organically before you're starting to pay for ads? Like SEO and things are still a real thing. So it's like watching what brands do on social and stuff. Like to somebody that's starting a business, it feels like, wow, you do that stuff, you blow up, so you get discovered and whatever. But I think it's like it's both of those engines, they work together. It's like the fundamental kind of stuff for people who are searching or just discovering versus like organically, or both. You need to be working in both of those areas. So what I'm trying to figure out is like, and it's different for every business, but what's the order of operations, right? Like what should you do? Like what should you be doing first? And like how many things should you be doing before you like mentally allow yourself to then move on to those other things? Or else you're spreading yourself too thin, right? So it's like making sure those fundamental things are done well, and then like how you're going to scale. So I think that's how people need to think, is like, and that's how businesses, enterprises think. They create a roadmap, right? Like if you're going to launch something, like what's the MVP? Like what is our hypothesis for how it's going to look in phase 2 when we start to scale, phase 3, whatever? And then it's a living thing. Like you keep coming back to it as you listen to the audiences and you start to learn new stuff, and then you come back to it and you say, oh, well, this is what we thought the plan was, but let's adjust it. And I think, businesses do that like year to year. A small business and you're just getting started, right? You're doing that every day. You might find an insight that helps you pivot in a totally new way. Like, I think it's paying attention, not spreading yourself too thin where you can't pay attention to like the social conversation, get those fundamental things done.
I think that's a great thing to do that you just said, is like not spreading yourself too thin. And for me, I want to do everything. And I have a thought and I'm like, oh, I want to do that now. And it's like, as soon as that thought comes, like, that's going to be a whole new business. And I want to fucking do it. It's like, dude, you can't fucking do this one and that one and this one and that one. It's like, and I think the real thing is like, I'm so excited about so many different things where it's like, they are natural and they are so true to who I am and what I like, because I don't like to stay on one thing for too long because I get bored. And so that's just a naturally who I am. But I think another good piece of advice to what you just said is like, if you really step back, what is it that you really fucking would enjoy doing every day? I think in the case of like, even Liquid Death, like they clearly enjoy that, what they're doing every fucking day. And so that's why it's becoming a success. And so again, don't spread yourself too thin and find the things that you enjoy. And it's okay to just fucking not do everything.
Well, I'm gonna cut us off.
I don't want to keep it stuff like that. It's like
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point.
I would like to, I was just do it. It's a real. I'm so happy to be able to see you and be able to chat again. It's fucking awesome. Enjoy the day, bro.
Yeah, you too.
I'll catch you in a little bit.